I think we got everybody here. So again, thanks everyone for joining and welcome. Really glad that everybody's here. Let me get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way first. We've got about an hour together, and we're saving real time at the end for your questions. So don't sit on them. Drop them in the chat or Q&A section as they come up. And then we're also recording, so if you have to jump off, no worries. We'll send you the link tomorrow to view it if you need to, or if you need to share it with your team. So, okay, well, here's the whole idea behind today. The practices that are winning right now do two things at the same time. They get found by the right patients, and they give those patients a reason to pick them over everyone else that's down the street. We've built, give me one sec, let me just get my slides in order here. We've built today around exactly that in two parts. I'll take the digital side, how you attract better fit patients, how you actually show up in AI search, that's the new thing, and how you turn that into booked consults. Then I hand it off to Dr. Mark Tager, and he takes you into the science that makes a practice really stand out, this gut-brain-skin connection, and what it does for patient outcomes. So stand out clinically, get found digitally. That's the whole hour in one line. Let's jump in. So quick intro. So you know who's talking to you. I'm Philip Kujawski. I founded WebToMed. And for past 25 plus years, I've done basically one thing, help healthcare practices and companies grow online. Website, search engine optimization, now the new AI search layer, patient acquisition, conversion, that whole funnel. We've worked with hundreds of clinics and companies and medical associations, just about every specialty you can name. However, our focus has been on integrative, functional, and aesthetic practices. None of what I'm sharing today is theory, it's patterns we see over and over. And we have kind of track record and history of the past 25 years to see what has changed. And I think that allows us to really be able to kind of peek into the future and understand what's going to happen next, how we can tweak our services and deliver the best possible outcomes for our clients and make sure they're visible to their patients. And then there's Dr. Mark Tager. Mark's a physician, educator, great friend, an author. He spent decades doing something really hard, taking cutting-edge medical science and making it usable in an actual practice. He's the CEO of Changewell. He co-founded the Vagus Nerve Society. He produces the Healing Journeys documentary series, and he's written a stack of books. I can recommend many. Some of them are integrative aesthetics, Feed Your Skin Right, but there is really a lot. So worth checking out. Here's why we're doing it together. Getting found and standing out usually gets treated as two completely separate problems. Marketing over here and then the clinical over there, right? So we think that's a mistake. Today, we're trying to put them in the same room, so to say. So here's how the next hour runs. My half goes first. I'll talk about the digital side. We start by naming the problem, because if we're not honest about what's actually broken, none of the fixes are going to stick. Then I'll take you through the three moves that matter most right now. And this is new for 2026. This field of AI search and GEO, how we call the optimization part of it, is changing very quickly. But I'll start first with positioning, going after the better, higher value patients instead of just chasing the volume. The second is that big one. And honestly, I think that's why a lot of you are here. It's getting found in AI search. Your patients aren't Googling anymore, or I should say, not just Googling. I think there are still people going to Google, but a lot of them are going to ChatGPT. They're asking ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. They're reading those AI overviews at the top of the page on Google. And there is a whole new craft. It's called GEO, and I'll get into that in one of my next slides. This decides basically whether AI recommends you or somebody else. And then the third move is turning all of that visibility into actual booked appointments. Because being found doesn't pay the bills on its own. If you don't get these patients from your website to your practice, then that obviously doesn't work. And that investment of your time and money a lot of times is not paying off if that part is not done. So simple three pillars, and I'll go into details for each and every one of those. Then I'll hand it off to Dr. Tager for the clinical half, the gut, brain, skin science that lets you stand out in a way no ad ever could. We'll wrap with a simple checklist, an attendee-only offer, and your questions. And again, chat your questions or Q&A box your questions as you think of them. We want to make sure we rather answer them than leave anything unanswered. All right, so before we get tactical, give me 1 minute here because everything else sits on top of this slide. Most of the clinic owners we work with are doing well on paper, but they're kind of stuck in real life. Look at what's on the screen. First, the schedule's packed, but with the wrong patients. It's high volume, thin margins, and mountains of admin work, right? It pays the bills, but it's not the practice you actually want to be known for. Second, the marketing's a lot of time reactive. You run an ad when bookings dip, and you redo your website every 5 years when somebody finally says it looks outdated. There is no system underneath it, right? Third, and this one's quiet but deadly, clinically you blend in. Same procedures, same claims, same words as every other practice in town. So patients shop you on price and parking. You don't want that. And fourth, you're invisible right where people are looking now. They're asking AI, and AI is handing back answers that don't include you a lot of times. That's a real problem these days, especially for practices that invested a lot over the years in search engine optimization, and they're seeing that being less and less relevant. Now, don't get me wrong, I think still a lot of people go to Google, and it's important to maintain your search engine visibility, but obviously there are many other choices these days, and it's important to make sure you're found everywhere. Now, look at the box on the right. I call it the differentiation gap. The practices pulling ahead aren't the ones with the fattest ad budgets. They're the ones that pair real digital visibility with a clinical story nobody else can tell. And some of this is going to be covered by Mark later on in the presentation. But get found and stand out is really the theme, because that combination is the whole point of today. Let's talk about move one, getting the patients you actually want. I think this is the highest leveraged thing on my side of the house, and most practices do it backwards. They market to everybody within 30 miles, and they end up connecting with nobody in particular. The answer isn't louder ads, it's sharper positioning. So start defining the patient you're built for. Not just an age and a zip code, but specific outcome you deliver better than anyone. Then build a page for each one of those outcomes and write it in a way that the patients talk, not the way that it reads like a billing code. Nobody types in procedure names, they type in a problem that's keeping them up at night, right? So from there, package and price for value, not a volume. And that may be bundled programs, but now importantly, clear outcomes and a premium experience. The clinics that race to the bottom on price win the busiest calendar and the worst margin at the same time. So make the fit obvious in 10 seconds. I go to a website, and if I land on your page, I need to instantly think, yes, this is the place for me. And there are several different factors that go into it. It's how the website is structured or how your meta ads are structured. There's a lot of ways where that can be optimized greatly, but sometimes those are small tweaks. Now, why does all of this matter, right? It's in the box on the right here. A right fit, high value patient is worth 3 to 5 times the lifetime value of a generic one. They book faster, they pay more, they stay longer, and send you more people just like them. Nail this, and the next two moves get a whole lot easier. So move two, and I think a lot of people came just to see this one. And if you take notes on the slide today, make it this one, because this is what's really, really new. The way people find clinics is changing, and it's changing really, really fast. What we've seen in search patterns and how people use Google and these AI agents was much different in 2025. Now, the obvious thing is they're not just Googling anymore, right? Somebody's asking ChatGPT who the best specialist near them is. Somebody else is asking Perplexity what to do about the symptom. And a ton of people are reading that AI overview at the very top of Google, but they never click a thing. That's a dangerous part, especially for the ones that invested heavily in search engine optimization, because patients a lot of times get their answers straight from AI, and you never see them on your website. You never get a chance to actually get them as a patient, or at least a patient lead. Here's a number that should get your attention. 1 in 4 adults in US now start a health question inside an AI chatbot. And that number may be 1 in 2 by the end of next year, right? It's climbing every quarter. We've seen it go up and up and up. So getting the AI to actually mention you is a new skill. It's called GEO, or generative engine optimization. Some people call it AEO, answer engine optimization, but it's really the same thing, right? It's not the same thing as the search engine optimization, you remember. It's kind of the new way of you being found. And working on it today is really important because you kind of get a head start. It's much harder to catch up, but it's so new that not many people are actually doing it. So if you're on this webinar, you're in the right place to basically figure this out for your practice and get more patients. Now, let's talk about a few practical things that move the needle, right? Like, how do I actually come up? And there's many factors, and they're changing, but I think the core is the same like it was before for search engine optimization. There's a lot of similarities. Some of the things are more important now than others, but I'll run through a list to kind of get you in a mindset of what can be done to get you to the top. So I think number 1 is answering real patient questions in plain language near the top of the page. The key here is that AI rewards being clear and not stuffing keywords, not making it kind of fluffy, but also that content needs to be relatable to patients. I think that's key. I see a lot of practices either not having enough content, not thinking about the patient at all. They're thinking what they provide, and sometimes they have a good explanation of that, but it's just really hard to read for a patient. They don't understand. The attention spans a lot of times are not there either. So you're kind of accomplishing 2 goals. You're making it better for AI, but also you're making it better for the patient. Now, another part is being authoritative. Make your services, your providers, your locations easy for a machine to read, because AI can pull and cite you. And, to give you an example, if you think about content, going back to that first part and kind of being authoritative, and the second part, well, if you have a blog post, make sure the name of your MD or nurse practitioner or any healthcare professional is there, because that brings that credibility, and it means that it's more authoritative. You can then link that to a specific provider page on your website. So that interlinking is not much different than what you would see with search engine optimization, but now becomes even more important. There is more you can do in the trust signal category, if you will, right? Because AI is scanning for that. Real bios, real credentials, solid FAQs, and the kind of pivots to that first point, answer real patient questions, fresh reviews, strong local presence. I know some of you may be telehealth practices. That is not really great for getting into those local areas and getting local visibility, but there are ways to do it. It gets a little bit more complicated for telehealth, but if you have a physical location, it becomes so much easier. But I still see a lot of practices that don't have their Google My Business set up. It's a listing within Google, and Gemini is relying on that information quite heavily. So if you want to go higher up at Google AI answers, that's one of the key things there. And then, aim to be the answer, basically, right? Aim higher than just being a link. You really want to make sure that you can answer questions that people ask, and AI will reward you for that. Basically, the practices doing all of this are getting recommended straight to patients who never are going to Google or go to the page 2 of Google, let's say. So this is, I think, out of all the things that you can do, those are fairly easy and quick. This covers probably good 70-80% of the most impactful things. There are more. I mean, you could do press releases, you could do things that traditionally were done with search engine optimization in mind, but those can get expensive. They can also, if not done correctly, just simply don't work. So there are more strategies. And I'm happy to talk to anyone one-on-one or answer questions in Q&A at the end if there are any specific ones. All right, let's go on. Move number 3. So turning all of that visibility into book consults. Here's the part that stings. Most clinic websites pull plenty of traffic still, and then leak most of it. Benchmarks say roughly 80% of qualified leads never book on the first visit to the website. 80%, that's a huge number, right? And a lot of times for practices, it's not a traffic problem, it's a conversion problem. But the good news, it's fixable. So a lot of it connects. Part 1, part 2, and this move 3 connects, that they are all interconnected. There are specific things you can do for conversions, but a lot of it connects where that conversion can be better, right? So if you look at your website, start at the top of the page. In plain English, answer 3 things: who you help, what you do, what happens next. If a brand new visitor can get those in about 5-10 seconds, they're gone, right? Now, once you have that in place, strip out the friction. One clear call to action per page, a site that loads fast on a phone, form that somebody can finish with one thumb at a red light is important. We all seen those long forms. People don't like to fill out long forms. Every extra field you add quietly costs you patience because people drop off. Why do I need to know this? A lot of times I recommend just the basics: name, phone, email, comments box. You gotta be careful, that information gets secured. There are solutions for that, but shorter the better, right? You need to get their core information so you can contact them, but it's don't ask them for their address and their social security number and date of birth, basically. Then after you have that, show your proof, right? And put it in front and center. Real outcomes, real patient stories, real credentials. That's what turns a curious visitor into a booked consult. And then last but not least, automate the follow-up, because nobody books the first time around. A simple email or a text sequence over the next couple of weeks pull a real chunk of that 80% back. So it's important to have some sort of automation to get patients back in the door. Now, your front desk physically can do that at scale, but a system can. So close that gap and you grow revenue without spending another dollar getting people to the site. Okay, let me pull it all together. Think of this as the checklist you hand your team tomorrow or later this week. 5 things, right? 1, define your higher value patient and build everything around them. Remember, 3 to 5 times the value. 2, win the AI search layer. This generative engine optimization, or GEO, isn't a nice to have anymore. It's how you get found, and this is only gonna grow. And then 3, close that conversion gap. Clarity, less friction, real proof, automated follow-up. And then number 4, and this is where Dr. Tager takes over: stand out clinically. with a story and outcomes people can't get anywhere else. And then 5, the big one, stop running these as separate projects. Think of it as a whole. Now, getting found brings a patient to your door. Standing out clinically is what makes them choose you. Stay and tell their friends. So if you walk away with 2 phrases today, let them be get found and stand out. Screenshot this, send it to your team, pick one thing to start this week. Now, before I bring Mark up for the clinical half, I want to make sure every single person here leaves with something tangible in their hands. And I don't want you to be just leaving with a bunch of notes. I want you leaving with something you can actually use. So we put together 2 things, and they're only for the people on the webinar. First, on the left, a free AI visibility audit. Let me tell you exactly what that is. So basically, we go out, check whether you're actually showing up for when patients ask these AI tools. So, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI overviews, real questions people put in your specialty, what they're typing right now, and we look how the AI talks about you. If you're even coming up, whether it knows you exist and which competitors basically it's putting in front of you instead. Then we send you a written report. Here are your gaps. Here's what to fix first. There's no cost, no strings attached. It's yours. Second, on the right, special attendee pricing on our packages. We obviously do a lot of website, search engine optimization, the AI visibility, email marketing, social media work, a lot of the same work I just talked you through, obviously the positioning work, geo, conversion, and a number you won't find anywhere else, frankly, and only for folks on this call. So both of them live in one place. If you want to go to webtomed.com/growth or scan that QR code on the right now, or just type in that link, and we'll drop it in the chat soon too, so nobody has to scribble it down. All right, that's the digital side handled. Now for the part I've been really looking forward to. I'll keep this transition real quick because I want Mark to have the floor. Everything I just covered gets patients to your door, but what makes them choose you, stay with you, and send their friends, well, that's a clinical edge nobody else can copy, right? And that's what Dr. Tager is about to give you. He's going to take you inside the gut-brain-skin connection, how the microbiome, vagus nerve, inflammation, and your patient's nervous system shape skin, aging, mood, even how well a treatment lands. And he'll show you how to bring it into an aesthetic or integrative practice, that inside-out approach that opens up real new ways to help patients and real new revenue. This is where science becomes your differentiator. We also have a quick poll. I'll launch it. If you guys have a second, this would really help Dr. Tager to customize his presentation. This is kind of what practitioner are you? And then I know a lot of you are functional or integrative practitioners, and I'm curious about this as well. How many of you being functional integrative actually provide aesthetic services? So if you guys could take a minute and fill that poll, that would be fantastic. And I see the answers coming in right now.
Good.
Yeah, we got a good number of functional and integrative, some nutrition, now aesthetics as well, chiropractic. Out of the functional and integrative practitioners, most of them are not providing aesthetic services. We have some, but not many. And no acupuncturists or health coaches in our group today. So, Mark, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. There we go. And pop this baby up. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. You should all be able to see my first screen about the gut, brain, skin axis. And that's some ways to get hold of me. So these are the 2 females who pay the most attention to me in my world. This is my background. I like to describe myself as a recovering family physician who has a split personality disorder. And by split personality, I mean about half of my work, my life has been in integrative functional work, starting out way back in the 70s. And the other half has been in aesthetics. I was chief marketing officer to found the Reliant Technologies, the Fraxel laser. So now what I've seen is these two fields are coming together. I do have the pleasure of co-founding the Vagus Nerve Society. It is still free to join, vnsociety.org. I'd encourage you to visit that website. We also have a provider directory, which is starting to take off right now. So just to pick up on what Philip has sort of discussed, I believe there are many doors that lead patients to put their butt into your reception area and on the functional integrative side. They have unresolved issues and unresolved pain, perhaps. They are looking for more quality of life that their allopathic physicians are not being able to provide for them. They have dissatisfaction with a 12-minute visit and a prescription, and they have a desire for a different kind of relationship. And if they move into your membership or if they move into a concierge type approach, they're willing to pay for that. And increasingly, as we see an older population, and this starts certainly at menopause for women, shortly thereafter for men, we see this movement towards longevity. But I'm going to posit to you that the biggest door, the door you can drive a truck through, is appearance. People want to look better at every stage of life. And there is increasingly this recognition that the way to have the best appearance is to have personalization. So we're going to start now with this concept that there is personalized nutrition for skin health and beauty. So I authored this book. This is my 12th book, and I defined something called integrative aesthetics. And it is a way of looking at this combined approach from aesthetics and integrative functional medicine coming together. And the definition is as follows. This is a series of personalized assessments, treatments, and counseling that recognize skin health and beauty is highly dependent upon multiple organ systems, that they themselves are affected by genomics, lifestyle, and environment. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Ashley McGovern in Manhattan Dermatology out here in California. And I think she really nailed it with her graphic here for an integrative aesthetics approach. And you'll see there some really interesting services: intelligent supplementation, eating right for your genes, hormones and skin health, gut health and the skin, healthy hair from within, food allergy testing, dietary assessment. And we'll come back to that in just a minute. But in the book, I have this saying, and I think it's a powerful one. It's really core to my belief that, as I've seen in 25 years in aesthetics, aesthetics tends to be something you do to a patient. It's a filler. It's a neurotoxin. It's a laser procedure. And increasingly, we're starting to see that integrative aesthetics, people coming in through the aesthetic door, this is something you do with a patient. Now, I'm sure all of you are pretty excited about longevity this and longevity that. And, I watched the same thing with the word wellness, starting back in the 70s, early 80s. But there's something that's happening here that you need to be cognizant of. And that is, everyone is now adopting more stuff to do to their patients. Well, let's do a little red light. Let's do a little ozone. Let's do cryo. Let's do PEMF. So that is actually trickling down. Soon patients will be able to get these kinds of services in their salons when they go get their nails done. So I believe that integrative aesthetics, a combined approach to looking at skin health and beauty from within, is your protection from this longevity commoditization. And it is something you do with your patient. So if you look here, there's only really two things she's doing: IV and IM nutrient therapy and low-level light therapy. Everything else is a collaborative kind of activity that you do with your patient. Now I'm going to shift focus here and bring out what I believe is one of the real core components of beauty from within, and that is that the glow comes from the gut. And, I think I've often asked aesthetic practitioners, why when they do the same procedure on two different patients, and one gets an incredibly great result and heals quickly and really looks wonderful, and the other has delayed wound healing? What's going on there? They have more swelling, more redness. It just takes them much longer to recover. And I think so much of that has to do with the health of the tissues. And that is intimately dependent upon what is going on in the gut. Now, this is my entire talk. So if you just want to take a screenshot here and go get coffee or dinner, that's fine. But this is everything I'd like to talk about in one slide. So if we look at the gut, we have gut microbiome, we've got dysbiosis, the need for diversity. We have the gut producing these short chain fatty acids that go throughout the body. The butyrates tends to go for the gut. Propionate, acetate go further on into the body. We have the concept of leaky gut and barrier integrity. We have the fact that what happens here is the production of metabolites and antigens that affect the immune system and affect the balance with the Tregs and the pro-inflammatory cytokines, interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, and this concept of systemic immune tone. Now, here's where, for me, I put on my vagus nerve hat, and we start thinking about the inflammatory reflex, which I'll speak to at some length. But the vagus nerve, 80% of it is afferent. It is afferent sensing. It senses cytokines, it senses metabolites, and it sends information upstream to the nucleus tractus solitarius, where it integrates into the brainstem. Then it sends information down through the efferent cholinergic signaling. And what this does is this hits the mast cells in the spleen and the liver through some receptors and downregulates this inflammatory activity. And all of this affects the skin in terms of the barrier integrity, the mast cell activity, the sebaceous and immune balance, and the clinical outcomes that we see. We see acne, rosacea, aging, and healing responses all being sensitive to this gut-brain-skin axis. Quick primer on the gut, it's 30 feet long. If you think about it and you put its surface area out, it's the same area as a double tennis court. The gut makes over 30 hormones. It is the neurotransmitter factory, the home of the immune system with Peyer's patches, and the home of the microbiome that I'm sure all of you know about, but it is these trillions of symbiotic bacterial cells and viruses and fungi, has protective, structural, metabolic. I think what's really important here, and we don't spend enough time with it, is the fermenting of dietary fiber into short-chain fatty acids. One of the best things you can do for your patients is teach them to read a food label, cut down on their glucose, figure out how much fiber and protein they're getting. The microbiome synthesizes vitamins, and it produces the neurotransmitters. So hormones and neurotransmitters, increased intestinal permeability, and dysbiosis are three sorts of contributions of the gut-brain-skin axis. Now, it's easy to think that GLP-1 is just in a syringe and it is just going into the bloodstream and just going to the brain. But if you look at it, the gut hormones are produced down in the small intestine and the colon mainly. And we've got the satiety hormones, GLP-1, oxyntomodulin, PYY, and in the colon as well. And they respond, in fact, these are the L cells in the gut, and they respond to sweet, bitter, and umami. And when they get those signals, they send out GLP-1 and oxyntomodulin, PYY, also the CCK to the brain, ideally to say, hey, cut the noise, I'm full. Now, there are these microorganisms that live in the gut produce neurotransmitters. So the lactobacilli, the bifido, produce GABA. Bacillus saccharomyces, Escherichia produce norepinephrine, Lactobacillus acetylcholine. Many species produce serotonin. All of these go into the bloodstream, but you know what? They do not cross the blood-brain barrier. They have their effect solely by how they interact with the vagus nerve. And remember, we talked about that. The vagus nerve is afferent, sending signals up to the brain. So if we correct the microbiome, and I'm sure you, as functional docs, functional clinicians going through the R's, you are going to fix the gut. And as you fix the gut, one of the first things that people will tell you is that, wow, my skin's better. Yeah, their bowel movements are better. They're not so bloated. But we see if they maintain this, we correct that microbiome, we get thicker skin, we get better keratin, luster, better collagen, fewer breakouts, less inflammation. There's an improvement of dermatitis and psoriasis, and we do get some UV protection. Now, I'm really not mentioning any products per se in this workshop, with the exception of I am just joining the Scientific Advisory Council for Microbiome Labs, whose products I've known about and used for many years. And I think that they've really got the handle on this gut-brain-skin approach with the total gut restoration that has the spore-based probiotics, the prebiotics, the polyphenols, the bioflavonoids, K2. They have some serum-derived bovine immunoglobulin, which is great for calming the gut, and some mucosal supportive amino acids. And also serene skin, which it's actually they've improved it. But what it does is it helps the bacteria produce more acetate for acne control. So when you have a patient that has acne, and very often these will be, spurred on by hormones and or the perfect constellation of hormones and low zinc and too much sugar in the diet, and too much milk product, and teenagers lifting weights and having too much whey, what happens is the bacteria shift. So they're not producing enough acetate. Acetate is critical for the skin. It goes into the circulation. And what this does is restore that balance by bringing more acetate to the skin and reducing the inflammation in the skin. It's always amazed me, and I guess I'm old enough that when I was in training, we were taught that the gut cells, the L cells, were just stuck together. And there was the only way that anything got through them was through the cells. And then in the mid-70s, late 70s, the Japanese said, no, you know what? There's a gap in which we can have all sorts of things go through this single lining. And, I ask people, this is an interesting activity for you. For those of you who are not follicularly challenged, Philip, you could do this. You pull a hair from your head. I can't really do that. And you say to yourself, well, how big is that? What is the diameter of that hair? Well, it's about 150 microns, which is essentially the 7 layers of epidermis that make up the top layer of your skin. But when you look at the gut, there's not 7 layers, there's 1 layer. And that is where so much of the rubber meets the road, the issues come in. Because, through these gaps, we get the outer shell of these gram-negative bacteria. It factors into autoimmune disease. It passes right into circulation, and it can initiate inflammation in a target organ. So Alessio Fasano, who sort of did the research on this when he was first at the University of Maryland and then subsequently Harvard, said, unlike Vegas, what starts in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. So we now know that more than 80 diseases occur as a result of the immune system attacking its own cells and organs. And if we look to the right, these are skin-related autoimmune conditions. You can look at them on the right, things like lichen planus, lupus, scleroderma, dermatitis herpetiformis. And so we long know that these GI disruptors are NSAIDs, pain meds, gluten-insensitive individuals, antibiotics, toxins, and alcohol. They separate these gaps. And I think this is just a wonderful, wonderful picture. Here we see on the upper left the multicolored organisms in the gut. In the blue, we see this single cell. And then we see what we see in a number of organ systems, this mucus layer that is there protecting the cells. We spoke to briefly the importance of these short-chain fatty acids. There's a number of them. They are important in appetite control, gut motility, energy expenditure. They're anti-cancer, and they're critical for the skin. So these short-chain fatty acids influence the cutaneous immune system. Propionobacterium is a genus that produces short-chain fatty acids, and this is the one that produces the acetate and propionic acid that has profound antimicrobial effects. Now, I'm going to shift because we've spoken pretty much now about chemicals. But really, we are all electrochemical beings. And we focused so much on chemistry in medicine, and we sort of give short shrift to the electrical part of things. And I'm always reminded about that when, I know that I've got a lot of electrical energy going on up here, but you can't tell because we can't measure that very easily because I've got this nice thick cranium. But interestingly enough, the heart throws out electromagnetic energy that can be picked up with an electromagnetometer. And that can be detected 3 feet from the body. So when you and someone else are within 3 feet in the consult, you have the ability to get what's called resonance, in which your electrical energy coming from your heart and the patient's heart is actually becoming resonant, vibrating in the same thing. Okay, I live in California. That's probably a little bit too California for most of you, but there is science to back it up. Now, if you're a functional doc, functional clinician, this is what you see all day. Migraines, GI motility, HPA axis dysfunction, immune dysfunction, insulin resistance, hormonal dysregulation, goes on and on, and skin disorders. And what's interesting, in our search for root cause, there is one major contributing factor that underlies all of these presentations, and that is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It's called the wanderer. It is predominantly a parasympathetic nerve. It controls many of the autonomic rest and relax, digest functions. Bidirectional, as I mentioned, 80% goes to the brain, 20% goes down, and it's really underappreciated in medical disorders. So it starts out in the medulla oblongata, exits to the jungle. Oh, excuse me, who's bugging me? Sorry, I thought I had this shut off. My apologies. My apologies. Okay, there we go. Well, we needed a break. We're getting into some heavy anatomy anyway. So, I mean, this is heavy stuff. But, you can track on this. This essentially starts in the brainstem, goes down through the neck, and interestingly enough, right here in the carotid, it runs in the carotid sheath. So this is the central highway for both afferent and efferent. And it also in the neck branches out to the pharyngeal branch, the larynx, and the superior cardiac. And here you can see these branches in the neck. And sometimes if you do procedures, you can injure one or more of these branches. But it then travels lower to lower esophagus. It innervates the lungs, the aorta, the heart, the related plexuses. It goes down through the diaphragm, and you can see all of the innervation through essentially all the major organ systems. So here's what it does. In the central nervous system, it attenuates nociception, the perception of pain. It reduces something called cortical spreading depression. And this is what happens in a migraine, when you get this little electrical activity and it just propagates through the brain. That's called cortical spreading depression. It increases lymphatic flow, reduces heart rate, blood pressure, opens the lungs up. It regulates gluconeogenesis. It's responsible for the normal peristalsis of the gut. And then spleen, as we mentioned, it detects and regulates systemic inflammation. So another laundry list of all the things that is involved in the parasympathetic nervous function and the role of the vagus nerve. And there's hardly anything that's not in this list. So again, I pointed out it is a superhighway, particularly in the neck. It is a mixed sensory and afferent. And this is the real piece that I'd like you to take home with you. And this is why getting patients to harness the power of their parasympathetic nervous system through doing things that stimulate the vagus nerve is so important. This is called the inflammatory reflex. It is the dampening the fire of inflammation through vagus nerve modulation of cytokines and neurotransmitters. And it goes something like this. The vagus nerve picks up these signals, these pro-inflammatory signals, and sends them up to the brain, as I mentioned, the nucleus tractus solitarius, and then down the efferent pathways where it impacts the liver and the GI tract and the spleen, and dampens the production of these inflammatory cytokines. Now, there are 4 ways to stimulate the vagus nerve. There's natural ways. There's implanted vagus nerve stimulators. There are auricular. There's a little small branch of the vagus nerve that goes to the ear. And then there's non-invasive cervical vagus nerve stimulators. Yoga, deep breathing, box. I teach patients all the time 4-7-8 breathing. In for 4, hold for 7, out through the mouth for 8. It's the long exhalation that's important. It's a little branch that goes through the throat, so singing, gargling, some sound things. Yes, you could jump into cold water, but you can also just immerse your face in cold water. That's called the diving response. And nutrition also has a lot to do with this. We measure vagus nerve in a surrogate marker, which is heart rate variability. You would think that the good Lord who made us would have made everything regular, and that would be good, but no. The more variability you have between these beats, the healthier that is. So we know that low heart rate variability is associated with lots of conditions, and you see those conditions here on the right. And I am essentially a food first kind of guy. I believe that you cannot out-supplement your patient's crappy diet. You can't do it. No amount of supplements, testing and supplements can out-supplement their bad diet. So we don't also have increasing evidence that nutrients and the anti-inflammatory diet reduces inflammation, improves rheumatoid arthritis, and helps protect the brain and the gut. By the way, this is my favorite story, my favorite supplement. And this has to do with heart rate variability. And they took college kids and gave them 10 grams of either dark chocolate, 72% or more dark chocolate. And the control group got white chocolate. And the single dose of dark chocolate, which is again a nutrient, not the sugar, but the cacao, helped with parasympathetic modulation and improved heart rate variability for several hours. Then there are implanted cervical vagus nerve stimulators. I would be shocked if there's anybody on this call today who implants them, but if you do, put it in the chat and we'll talk later. There are auricular. They take longer. There's a small little branch in the ear. They're afferent only, but they are FDA cleared for irritable bowel disease in adolescents and also for the withdrawal of opioid addiction. You've got to sit them on the ear for a while, and they can be helpful in diabetic neuropathic pain. But for me, the superhighway is the transcervical. One of the sponsors of the Vagus Nerve Society is Truvaga, and this is just a 2-minute stimulations, so 4 minutes before bedtime in the morning can help set that vagus nerve stimulation in the right direction. We see so many patients come in wired and tired, and this can be very helpful. So these are all my basic gut health recommendations. If you're a functional doc, You probably know this already. We want to lean on fiber. And it does amaze me how difficult it is, personally, to get 25, 30, 35 grams of fiber a day. You need to think about it and work on it. And it doesn't happen overnight. We need to guide our patients slowly. Serum-derived bovine immunoglobulin, L-glutamine, zinc-carnosine, colostrum, their liquid herbal blends, digestive enzymes, some of the herbal teas, vagus nerve stimulation. And again, I'm prone to like Megaspore, total gut restoration, and coupling that with serene skin for skin health related things. So in summary, and I realize I've thrown a lot of information at you, you'll find all of it in my book on integrative aesthetics. And you can grab that on Amazon. It's essentially a practice management book with the incorporation of how do you incorporate aesthetics or how do you incorporate functional integrative things. So the skin microbiome is the key to skin health and immunity. There's an interaction with the immune system and the environment. We see dysbiosis linked to so many inflammatory skin conditions. And then the gut microbiome really does have a major influence on skin health. Probiotics, postbiotics improve the skin barrier. They modulate inflammation. And I think we'll see more and more of the therapies in the future targeting the skin microbiome. Bunch of references. There I am with my girls. That's how to get to me. You can hit me. That's my direct email. Hit me up on LinkedIn, at DRM Tager on Instagram. And for those of you, you might want to jot this down. I'm producing for the Root Cause Project a series of documentaries supporting functional medicine and its approach. It's a series called Healing Journeys. We have the first two up and available. One is Hacking the Vagus Nerve. The other is Mold, the Hidden Epidemic. We're now producing in the final stages of a documentary on metabolism with an emphasis on mitochondria, muscles, and the microbiome. And I know, even though I am follicularly challenged, we have one coming up on hair restoration, on regeneration from within, which is kind of fun. So at this point, I hope you found this of value. It's always, Philip, I'm so glad we got this together. We've been trying to get together literally for years to do something. I mean, we met when I worked very closely as Director of Strategic Initiatives for A4M. And I used to moderate the show and do the practice management, and you were an integral part of that. And so it's great that we're able to expose the audience to, both of our brains simultaneously. So thank you all. Questions, we're glad to take them now. And that's the end of my presentation.
Yeah, definitely. Great wealth of information. I always learn something new. I know this is really for the practitioners to be able to improve their practices, but personally, I took a screenshot of a few of your slides to review for later. Yep. So thank you for that. Excellent information. Well, this is my favorite part, right? Everybody's questions. If you haven't dropped one in the Q&A box yet, now's the time. We've got Mark here. We got me as well. So throw us anything, either the digital side, clinical science, doesn't matter. Honestly, best questions live right where those to meet, right? So if you can find one, definitely shoot it at us. But quick map, what I got on the screen, our information. If you want to get that free AI visibility audit, you have a link there. If you want to talk to Dr. Tager, his information is there as well. We'll get the slides or the video to your inbox tomorrow. Again, thanks for spending the hour with us, and let's see what we have as far as questions. Here is one. I think this is